Some people never get the opportunity to live vicariously through their children. I'm one of the lucky ones as my son Doug is playing in college. I worked very hard coaching him and his sister Franny when they were young. Both watched intently while I played in recreational-level soccer leagues. My weekends were dedicated to their soccer tournaments where both were stars. My weeknights were spent shuttling them to and from practices or on skills and drills at whatever park wasn't being used. They played sports every month of the year, but soccer was where they really excelled. It was also my wife Shay's desire to keep them so preoccupied with sports that the riskier pastimes of life had difficulty creeping in. On the surface, that appears to have worked. On the surface, Doug quit soccer before his senior year in high school and has turned down soccer scholarships. Mostly out of rebellion, we think. Kind of like a take that. It worked out well enough for him as he became the high school football team's field goal kicker and occasionally as a punter, too. So how is it that I'm watching Doug play in college? Well, Tech thought he had about the strongest leg they'd seen recently, so they offered him a football scholarship. The intent for him was to be a field goal kicker, but he outperformed the punter so soundly that he secured the spot as their #1 punter. As a true freshman. Franny is upset beyond belief. Doug quits soccer, rebels against everyone, and ends up smelling like a rose. Now those Division II schools chasing after Franny are in her rear-view mirror. She wants to play at a Division I school just like her brother. Ah, sibling rivalry. At every Tech home game, Shay and I have seats in the section set aside for the parents of the players. What makes it even cooler is that everyone actually sits and watches the game rather than standing up from flag fall to that's all. Another bonus is that the drunk student section is far away. If we wanted, the school could get us tickets to the away games as well. So far, we've not done that, but are planning on going once or twice. Our local television station has the contract to broadcast all of the Tech games. I record them to the cloud. When the quarterback throws a touchdown pass, they zoom in on his parents to see their reaction. When the running back zips in for a touchdown, they zoom in on his parents to see their reaction. When the punter kicks an awesome one out inside the 5, they cut to commercials. Yeah, well, who can blame them? The parents aren't really a social bunch, especially if your kid is a kicker, so we didn't make many friends in the stands during the first home game. Still, it's a lot of fun. Whereas my short business trips never really caused me angst, the upcoming product rollout was scheduled for the weekend Tech hosts' state. I'd have to miss the game, but planned on watching it later in my hotel room. I'd rather be at the stadium, but work pays the bills, and a punter's scholarship doesn't exactly cover all of the costs. Shay and I met shortly after graduating from college. Our respective companies sent us to the same seminar. Our first meeting was uneventful. Brock Zellman, are you related to Charles Zellman? The attractive brunette spoke after looking at my name tag. Well, Shay Wilson, not that I'm aware of. I assume you know him? Looking up from a lingering glance at her name tag. As a matter of fact, he was a year ahead of me in high school. Just thought that with your unique last name there was a chance, as she smiled. Maybe we should have a drink this evening and I'll see if you're related to Ann or Nancy Wilson, as I returned her smile. Cute reference. Sure, I'll meet you after the last session in the hotel lobby after visiting the ladies' room. Later on, as I stood in the hotel lobby wondering if Shay had pulled a runner on me, one of my work associates started chatting me up. He was really into the last speaker, so I pretended to be interested. I caught Shay out of the corner of my eye. Sorry to cut you off, but my drinking buddy is here. No problem, Breeze. See you tomorrow. Hey, Shay, ready to go? Breeze? Yeah, combining my first and last names. I've heard it all my life, so it's kind of stuck. Well, Breeze, you offered to buy me a drink. Let's go. Corny. But we really got along well that night. A gentle peck on the lips left me wanting much more, but that wouldn't happen for several months, and after several dates. It was worth the wait. Not much out of the ordinary about our courtship and marriage. Her parents seemed to like me and mine her. Since the marriage budget was tight, it was a small event with about 40 people. We qualified for a starter home about halfway between her office and mine. 2 years later, we welcomed Doug, and not quite 2 years later, Franny came along. As this was the first and only time I've been married, I didn't question that there would be arguments. We could find the stupidest things to bicker about. Not enough money, not enough time. Should have checked with Shay first. Why am I bothering her with that? We'd go out of our way to annoy the other off before the dust from the argument had settled. To put an end to our abusive behavior towards each other, we finally agreed to see a counselor. That seemed to help some, but we have a ways to go. One Saturday night, after some tussle about what I can't remember, we had my company party to attend. Shay flirted shamelessly and danced inappropriately all evening, just trying to get me to make a scene. I watched like a hawk, but she always kept inappropriate hands at length. However, there were touches and chaste kisses and embraces. I wasn't going to play her game. Shay tried to start a fight on the drive home. Some of your salesmen said that you appeared to be getting off on them flirting with me. Sometimes people just disappear. No disputes over custody or alimony. Her eyes got wide and she shut up. It was frosty at our house for over a week. No apology was ever extended. What really irked me was the sales staff, in the week after the party, telling me that I wasn't worthy of the attractive woman I was married to. One jerk even had the gall to ask if we had an open marriage. A note on my desk suggested that since I was inadequate as a husband, I should hand her off each weekend. On the day that Tech played state, I asked Shay to refrain from telling me how things turned out. I wanted to watch it in my suite, enjoying the company-paid room service dinner and drinks. To ensure radio silence, I powered my cell phone off at game time earlier that afternoon. The game itself was sloppy, as is the norm for bottom-feeding teams. Doug boomed a few punts. Late in the third quarter, Doug punted again, but this time some overly aggressive defensive player leveled him in a deliberate cheap shot. Personal foul, roughing the kicker, but Doug stayed down. The players nearby looked panicked and took a knee. A replay showed Doug's leg bending in a way a leg should never be bent. As the Theismann broadcast rule kicked in, they didn't show the replay of his leg breaking. In 1985, quarterback Joe Theismann was sacked and his leg broken in a very grotesque manner. We all know that, as they showed it from several angles about 1,000 times. The backlash was immediate and fierce. Broadcasters now shy away from letting you see the gory stuff. Backing the video up, I watched the collision several times. No way does Doug play again this season. The cart eventually loaded him up and started his journey to the hospital, I assumed. He waved as the crowd cheered. I paused the broadcast and then powered my cell phone on. There were numerous texts and voicemails from friends and family which I waded through. Then I called Shay. She seemed really shook up. Doug was in surgery and she would call me back when she knew more. Checking with the airlines, there was no way getting home this evening. My food was cold and I was already out of beer. What else could go wrong? Never tempt the gods like that. I resumed watching the broadcast. As the cart rolled across the turf, they cut to the parents section and showed Shay with tears dripping and her hands over her mouth. She was being consoled by Robert Marks. He's a salesman for my company and was one of the guys who was sniffing around her at that company party. He kissed her on the forehead as he pulled her close to his chest. Why the heck is he sitting in my seat and consoling my wife? The caption on the screen even misidentified them as Brock and Shay Zellman, a 6-second clip that ended my ignorance and likely my marriage. My phone buzzed every once in a while. I didn't answer any calls, but I listened to the messages. None of them, Shay included, mentioned the 6-second clip. Shay's message said that Doug was awake and alert. I called University Hospital and they connected me to Doug. "What's up, Dad?" in his usual cheery voice. "Just saw you get hammered in the game. How bad?" "Well, this season is over, but it's just some broken bones and ligament damage. At least it's not my kicking leg. They operated almost immediately and wheeled me back into this room not long ago. I should be fine in a few months." "Do football studs get special treatment in the hospital?" "Yeah, I guess. A couple of the younger nurses are being overly friendly. Should make me quite popular at the frat parties. Needing overnight nursing care, you know, he chuckled. That's my boy, looking to cash in on an angle. Well, gotta go. Glad to hear it's nothing worse. See you when I get home. Love you. Wait, Mom wants to talk to you. Tell her I'm busy working on something important. Good night. Night, Dad. My heart was still racing. You sometimes see a kid take a hit and never walk again. That bullet's been dodged. I powered my phone off again. I had no desire to talk to anyone else tonight. The company that I work for makes the storage devices and search software for tracking GPS movements. The most common use is for tracking or mapping applications. Almost all cars nowadays send a signal which gets captured by our software. You can determine the change in their global positioning and then compute how fast they accomplished it. When you intersect that GPS reading with known highways, you know how traffic is moving. Mapping doesn't rely on a single vehicle, but combines all headed in that direction to determine traffic flow. Repeat that for all roads in all directions, and you begin to see the magnitude of the storage requirements. What's captured is little more than a device ID, coordinates, and date-time stamp. Pretty simple when you think about it. Law enforcement uses it to place people at the scene of a crime. How do I know this? I worked on the team that wrote that software. With time to kill, I figured I'd try to play sleuth before the data is archived. I've done this countless times. When the police come calling, we cross-check devices in the time leading up to a crime. Cars that move slowly through a neighborhood and then return a day or two later, the same day as a crime, usually get thoroughly researched. Cars that have never stopped at a residence before, and then something bad happens around the time that car speeds off, also get a lot of examination. Tools like this make identifying potential suspects easier. There's several lawsuits winding their way through the courts claiming that this violates someone's right to privacy. Most have lost, as this isn't really all that different from an eyewitness report. With the exact global coordinates for my house, I searched for all GPS signals near that location, starting at around 2 a.m. Saturday. As one might suspect, not much activity at that time of day. Around 8 a.m., the database picked up a new device, and almost immediately a second device. The first one is likely to be Shay's car, and the second her cell phone once it disconnected from the house Wi-Fi. Gathering hits from both devices into a temporary database, I knew where those devices went since then. Shay's car stopped moving around 8:30 a.m., but her cell phone pinged right up until now. Having captured that data, I set about to put streets and buildings to the device movements. What I found made my blood boil. Her car stopped at a house owned by Robert and Teresa Marks. Her cell phone stayed there until around 11 a.m. and then continued to the football stadium on Tech's campus. So she had her own little tailgating party at the Marks residence. Maybe they were simply making bets on the game, going over the stats, right? My turn to call nonsense. Around the time Doug was taken to University Hospital, Shay's cell phone also made its way there, and that's where it is currently located. Guess she'll need a ride to pick up her car. On a whim, I decided to map all of Shay's car movements for the last week. That's all that's available without tapping into archived databases. I discarded all but the stopping points, and it painted a sickening picture. As expected, she went to work stopping for short periods at what must have been stoplights. Stops at the grocery store after work raised no eyebrows. Stopping at the Marks residence on Wednesday from noon until 1:30 p.m. had me seething. Armed with what I now knew, I sent out several emails to various firms specializing in tracking people. Private investigators is what they fancy calling themselves. Exhausted, I dozed off. In the morning, prior to turning on my cell phone, I repeated my searches. Shay's cell phone left the hospital around 11 p.m. and went directly to her car. With little hesitation, her car left the Marks residence, and both devices returned to our house just before midnight. A few of my emails requesting rates and availability had been answered. Of course, they were available to help me if my wallet was fatter. Looks like I'll need another strategy. When my cell was revived, there were more well-wishers and an upset Shay since I failed to call or text her. I still wasn't in the mood to talk, so I sent a message. Late night, early start, Chat with you later. My phone buzzed with an incoming call. Shay, of course, but I simply let it go to messages. I didn't need to meet up at our demo booth for another 90 minutes, so I dug into the background of Robert and Teresa Marks. I was specifically looking for her email and phone number, which I found. They were parents of one child, and their kid was in a different high school than Franny. It was time to head to work, so I filed all that information away. My plan was to have Teresa Marks discover them if they repeated their Wednesday get-together. How to supply that information without it tracing back to me was my next obstacle to overcome. At lunch, I did some more research on Teresa. My plan was to print shop a picture of Robert, Shay, and Shay's car, with a note stating that this car has been seen at her house on Wednesdays around noon, and the lady and gentleman went inside for 90 minutes. I'd overnight an envelope to Teresa at her office and let her do the dirty work. Before my lunch break was over, I called Doug again. He was soaking up the attention and had even done an interview with our local television station. Turns out the roughing the kicker penalty gave our team a first down, and they scored the go-ahead touchdown a few plays later and then held on to win the game. Quite a price to pay, but he was loving it. Shay must have been at the hospital as she called as soon as I disconnected from Doug. "This is Breeze," should annoy her. "This is your wife. Would it kill you to call me?" "Hey, I'm trying to earn a living. What's so important that it can't wait until I get home?" There was a hesitation. "I just miss you, and it was very traumatic when Doug got injured." "Well, he seems to be doing fine. My lunch break is about over. I'll call you from the airport later tonight." I didn't wait for a response and ignored the immediate return call. I should probably tone it down, or she might not repeat her Wednesday affair. I really want Teresa to handle this, as I don't think I could avoid jail time if I got involved. I prepared the overnight envelope for Teresa and dropped it off on my way to the airport. Getting in near midnight on Sunday gave me an excuse to spend very little time with Shay. She left for her job Monday morning before I got up. As I had some comp time coming, I dropped by University Hospital and visited with Doug. His cast had too many signatures to count. His current girlfriend, whom I'd never met, was anxious to get him away from the fawning cheerleaders and nurses. Later in the day, Shay sent a text. "What time will you be home tonight?" I responded. "Lots of paperwork from the show, so don't wait on me to eat." When I rolled in around 9 p.m., I could tell that Shay was upset. I figured if I kept her in that mood, she'd seek comfort in Robert's arms again. Our conversation was dominated by me rambling on and on about imaginary problems with the show and my boss and the customers, and Shay finally said she was going to bed. Franny sent me a text on Tuesday telling me she'd gotten a campus visit invite. This worked perfectly, and I replied that we should go out and celebrate tonight. By the time we got home, it was about 10 p.m., and everyone was exhausted. Again, I didn't have to spend time with Shay. Wednesday morning brought mixed emotions. I wanted to believe that Shay would never cheat, but that was being overridden with the desire for Teresa to catch her in the act. Unlike the previous few days, there were no text messages from Shay. So late afternoon, I sent one to her. "I'll be home early tonight." Shay usually beats me home unless she stops to run errands. When Franny came in from practice around 7 p.m., she looked around. "Where's Mom?" "Not sure. I haven't heard a thing from her today. I sent a text earlier but got no response." "Just as well. She's been a real pain recently." "You guys okay?" "I don't know. Difficult doesn't begin to describe it. What do you want to do for dinner?" "I've got some protein meals, so don't worry about me." I tried Shay's cell and left another voice message. Franny went to bed at her normal time. I was beginning to get worried, so I sent another text message. Still no response. I tapped the database again and confirmed that Shay's car arrived at the Marks' residence a few minutes after noon. Different this time was that it left around 12:45 p.m. and stopped at a rest area off of the interstate 30 miles north of the city. That's where it currently sits. Franny was out the door early as she had weight training before school. None of my calls or messages had been returned. Mixed emotions again. On my way to work, I stopped in to see Doug. His girlfriend was there again. No, he hadn't heard from his mom recently. He was thrilled that they were releasing him today. Around 10 a.m., I was summoned to the front desk and found a man waiting to speak with me. Nate Bellows identified himself as a detective. They'd found Shay's car and she was locked in the trunk. They transported her to Merciful Heart Hospital. Throughout all of this, I had to answer the typical, "Where were you?" questions. Eventually, Detective Bellows got bored and wished me well. The way he said it made me think there was more to the story. Attempting to follow the concerned husband's script, I took some more personal time off and headed over to Merciful Heart. When I arrived, Shay was not in her room, so I waited in area designated for family. A couple of nurses were chuckling. My guess is that the husband did it. Probably, but you gotta give him kudos. I've never seen one painted up like that, and now we've got two of them. Were they talking about Shay and Robert? Now I really wanted to see her. When they rolled Shay back into her room, I couldn't help it. I broke out laughing. She was painted cyan from head to toe. Printer's ink, I was told. It would eventually wear off. The hospital staff did what they could, but only time would make it go away completely. She was in for several sessions of rubbing alcohol and hairspray blotting. Little by little, it would go away. To go with her new look was a 2-inch red A on her forehead. A crude tattoo is what the nurse called it. A knife sliced the A into the skin, and then some red ink was pressed into the wound. Crude, but effective. Shay claimed that she was carjacked. I noticed the nurse rolling her eyes. "I look hideous," as Shay sobbed. "But at least you're alive. Where were you when this happened? What time?" My questions were ignored as Shay continued to weep. Her chart was on the door, so I glanced at some of the pictures. I almost burst out laughing again. She had a big red A on her chest too, about 12 inches tall, same thing with a knife and red ink. When I stepped out into the hall, one of the other nurses was telling another. "And she looks just like her boyfriend. He was brought in a few hours after her this morning." "Boyfriend?" the other nurse responded. "Well, that's what we're guessing. Different last names, you know, but both wearing wedding bands." I wandered the halls looking for the room with Robert Marks in it. He had no visitors. Shay showed no other injuries, however, both of Robert's legs were in casts. Don't you love it when a plan comes together? It was a very productive afternoon back at work. The local evening news had a story about an apparent break-in where the homeowner had his legs broken and was found covered in cyan printer's ink. Crime Stoppers would like to pay you for any information leading to the arrest of the perpetrators of this dastardly deed. When I called University Hospital, they no longer had Doug as a patient. I'm back to being on a need-to-know basis. I'll hear from him when money runs low. Franny came in at her normal time. No mom again? Yes and no. She's a patient at Merciful Heart. Apparently she was carjacked. They painted her cyan, then cut a little scarlet A on her forehead and a big scarlet A on her chest. Like that novel about Puritans and adultery? That's what I'm guessing. There's a guy in the same hospital also decorated up that way. He was found at his home. Your mom claims she was carjacked, but I'm not buying it. Feel free to go visit her, but I'm kicking my feet up and searching the internet for divorce attorneys. I'm good. Unreal. How can you just sit there so calm? I've had all day to think about it. She's been cranky for at least a month. I guess she wanted out. I got 2 great kids out of her, but it's time to turn the page. I wish I had a picture. She looks ridiculous. Franny perked up. Hey, I'm off to see Mom. I just smiled. Yep, she even got her mom to show her the big red A. The pictures are up on her social media page along with information about her lover being in a similar situation. Tossed under the bus, big time. Shay's folks and mine called, so I repeated Shay's carjack story and gave them room information. I even heard from Doug. He seemed oblivious to the implications. Since I no longer cared about how Tech's football team was doing, I convinced Franny that she should take her campus visit this weekend. Within an hour, she had the flights, hotel, and car rental all booked. Before we flew out Friday afternoon, Shay texted, "Are you coming to see me?" I just wanted to reply no, but Franny convinced me to send. No, but your boyfriend has 2 broken legs, so maybe he needs company. He's 5 doors down by the elevators. After landing, I discovered a steady stream of denials had piled up while we were in flight. I simply ignored the calls. I had a delightful weekend with Franny. Well, actually, I handed her off Friday night to the soccer team and had only received texts since. Cherishing my own company for 48 hours, I was ready to get home. I'd spent some time making an appointment to start the divorce. On Saturday night, I watched Tech's game. Glad I did. Doug got more airtime than all of the previous games combined. They even ran his hospital room interview. His girlfriend has an uphill battle to stay in that position. There were several starry-eyed cuties surrounding Doug. When Franny and I returned late Sunday, the lights in the house were on, and a few cars were out front. Ambush time. We walked in to find the unfaithful wife and her parents sitting in the front room. Shay had a ghost-like glow to her as the cyan still lingered. The red A on her forehead was covered by a bandage. Ignoring Shay, I looked at her folks. "Hey, Pops, Grams. What brings you out this way so late at night? Cut the crap, Breeze. You weren't around to bring Shay home. Oh yeah, I forgot that her boyfriend has 2 broken legs. My bad." "He's not my boyfriend," from Shay. "Lover? Partner?" giggled Franny. Her grandmother responded, "Young lady, watch your mouth." Franny was on a roll. "So, Mom, do cyan people taste like all the others?" Shay jumped up and I think she was going to slap Franny. Her father yanked her down by her ponytail, and she plopped back between her parents. "Don't you ever threaten my granddaughter again," came from her upset father. I took charge. "Listen up, Shay. You destroyed your marriage and I'm filing for divorce. Expect to be served this week. Franny will be off to college next fall, so we need to work out visitation. Once she's gone, I'm selling my half of the house." "Just like that? Take it or leave it." "Oh, now you want to talk? A bit late for that, don't you think? I'd ask you why, but I've already figured out that it doesn't really matter." Shay's dad chimed in. "She's going to have some legal bills. You're on the hook for those." "Legal bills?" "Yeah, the police cited her for providing false information. They used GPS tracking to pinpoint her car to the residence of the apparent break-in. There was no carjacking." "Wonderful. I'll probably have to split the cost of some new cyan outfits, too." Franny giggled. "And cyan eyeliner. Cyan accessories, too, like purses and shoes." Shay's mother snapped at us. "Enough already. Well, why don't you make it easy on everybody and take her with you? We'll even help pack a suitcase or 2. "No, this is my house and I'm staying," barked Shay. "Well, it's been a long weekend and I'm going to bed. You can sleep on the couch." I locked the bedroom door. Don't know when they left, but Shay's parents weren't around in the morning. Franny was already gone. I left as quickly as I could. Divorce papers were served to Shay. At her workplace, of course. No need to play nice now. Took time, but we're divorced. Franny persuaded the judge to allow her to stay in the house with me as primary caretaker. She cited Shay as being a poor role model. One day on the kitchen table was a present waiting for me from Franny. It was a shirt that read, "I'm almost as awesome as my daughter." I wore it to her college signing day at the high school. Franny was going to try to succeed playing soccer for a Division I school. As expected, I had to endure several interviews with the authorities. Always present was my attorney, as I wasn't about to let my guard down. Since Teresa's brother runs a print shop, she and he were mentioned as persons of interest, but no charges were ever announced. Doug recovered and started his sophomore year as the #1 punter again. It still amazes me that nobody has ever mentioned seeing Shay with someone else at that football game. The caption on the screen must have fooled everybody but one. Franny's freshman year was trying for her. No playing time as she was red-shirted due to the number of seniors. However, they renewed her scholarship and she's now getting lots of playing time. Doug has let his hair grow and has a new girlfriend just about every time I see him. At home or on the road, I attend both kids' games, work permitting. What better way to spend their inheritance? I don't date much, but that's slowly beginning to change. Took me the better part of a year to even have a casual relationship. It felt like I was cheating. What's up with that? I miss what I had, but not what it turned into. As expected, I see Shay at major events involving our kids. She's brought a date a few times, but it's never the same guy. If we happen to chat, I end it quickly, trying not to be rude before mingling amongst the other guests. Not letting her ease her conscience is my last little bit of petty revenge. And so, we've reached the end of today's story. Was it what you expected, or did it take a twist you didn't see coming? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below, and let's get a conversation going. If this story kept you hooked, make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new here or just haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to join our community. I bring you fresh, captivating stories every day, so click that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.